and I am really excited to be working with you around the topic of outcomes and impact. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, as I think it's critical for libraries to be able to clearly articulate the immense value of what we do and be intentional about doing it. So we do a lot of really good stuff all the time, and we need to be able to really speak to what those things are and why we do them, and make sure that we're choosing to do the right good stuff. In my daily work, I design and implement technology-powered programming for all ages, but particularly teens and new adults, that sort of 16 to 24-year-old range. If you're not familiar with Cuyahoga County Public Library, we're a large system circling Cleveland, Ohio, with 27 branches, serving 47 ethnically, economically, and culturally diverse communities. We run the gamut from inner-ring urban neighborhoods to wealthy suburbs and everything in between. Some of our teens go to schools that are an academic emergency. Others go to schools that are starved for excellence. Some of our teens bear the burden of Ivy League expectations, and others the hopes and dreams of new American families. And some are parenting their younger siblings to the best of their abilities while trying to advance themselves. So my goal is to ensure that the programs we're offering all of these teens help grow the type of information and technology literacy skills they need to thrive in the 21st century. So no problem, right? Like, that's not that big of a deal to try to figure out. But so we're plugging away, and I wouldn't be able to do that without doing some of this outcome planning. And I love to talk to people about this stuff. So please do reach out to me, whether you attended the original webinar or not, if you have any questions or want to talk through anything. All right, that's enough about me. Let's get going. So the theme for this year was do it yourself. And I thought just real quick I'd talk a little bit about why. And it's this sort of concept that libraries are moving from storehouses of information to facilitators of learning. So sort of from a passive sort of thing to a hands-on. You see this in the maker movement, what a lot of libraries are doing, where they're helping customers create everything from 3D printing objects to knitting and sewing to gosh, I don't even know, all sorts of stuff. And we see it also in connected learning and in self-publishing in libraries. All these sorts of things are sort of based around connecting our customers with the resources they need to actually do stuff themselves. So instead of offering customers a chance to acquire knowledge in the form of physical materials, we are offering customers the opportunity to play with information and create and share new knowledge. Beyond just supplying the ingredients needed to fulfill a pre-existing recipe, we can now offer our customers the space and support to work together as chefs. So for example, we've always had things like knitting books, where a customer could check it out and take it home and teach themselves to knit. But now we're moving more towards, we may still have those resources, but we're doing more things in libraries where we're maybe teaching people how to knit, or having knitting meetups where customers connect with others interested in that type of field. So we did a poll with the live group and found out all sorts of crazy cool stuff that people are doing for their Teen Tech Week Do-It-Yourselves programming. And really all of this outcome stuff, whether it's one of those types of programs where it's maybe creating video games or doing some sort of 3D printing or Minecraft or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be tech. All this outcome stuff we're going to talk about today really fits in. So why bother doing outcomes? So this quote, of course, is from Alice in Wonderland, where she asks, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" "Well, that depends a great deal on where you want to get to," said the cat. "I don't much care where," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. "Well, so long as I get somewhere," Alice added as an explanation. "Oh, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if only you walk long enough." So in this exchange, I had asked quite a few of the peers who they consider wiser in this exchange, and without exception, everyone says the cat, right? Because we know he's speaking a sort of universal truth that we recognize as adults, which may be new to Alice as a child, that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So the outcome planning process is a way to make sure we're moving along the path towards our impactful goal. Sometimes this sort of outcome, these terms, outcomes, outcome measurements, impact, can feel kind of intimidating. So I thought it might be helpful to take us outside of our daily grind for a sec and bring us back to where we started with our food analogy while we're helping our teen chefs cook up something good. So if we think of outcomes, etc., as tools to grow a business, sticking with the food theme, if you were running a restaurant, what information would be helpful to grow your business? How much time does the chef spend preparing each dish? What types of dishes are you going to serve and why? How many customers are served on an average night? Or how many customers, or how hungry are customers when they leave versus where they came in? And so we talked about this with the initial group, and we had various answers, but no matter what you're thinking about right now, you are actually correct. All of these are important things to consider if we were going to grow our restaurant business. So let's take a little bit of a look at what these things mean. So our first one, how much time does the chef spend preparing each dish? This is important as an input. These are the things that libraries and librarians and others put into a program, for instance, in our world to make it a success. So in terms of the restaurant, the amount of time the chef puts into the dish, how much you're paying him perhaps, what ingredients are going into the dish, how many chairs and tables you need, the physical space. These are all things that have to happen in order for the program to happen, or in this case, the meal to happen, or the service. So these are important pieces because without, let's say, a staff member to interact with people, there would be no program. So these are things we have to think about in terms of how much we're putting into our programs. All right, the second question, what types of dishes are you going to serve and why? This is an important question because you may look around and think, well, geez, there's a ton of Mediterranean restaurants in this area, but there are absolutely no Indian restaurants. So that seems like a bigger need. Or we really need more healthy restaurants in this area. That's sort of your market research thing. And then maybe you're also thinking about we want to have fresh ingredients from the local farmers market or from that are locally raised, or what other issues are going into your decision making. So, and this goes back to all those things contribute to why you're doing these services. So in the library world, these are our activities. So if we're doing a program, what are we going to do in the program? So if we're doing a program to help kids build STEM skills, what types of activities would we do in order to do that? So if we're going to say, okay, we're going to use Lego robotics to build our STEM skills, our inputs would be the Legos and the robotics and the laptops we're programming them with, plus our time. And then the activities would be what we're going to do with the students that are attending the program, what's going to happen in the program. Okay, so how many customers are served on an average night? This is one that was a popular answer when we did it as a quiz that a lot of people thought was really, really important. And it is, of course. This is something libraries are incredibly good at. This is called an output. So our outputs are things that are results of the program, kind of, that can be, the easiest way to think of them are things that can be counted. So how many customers were served on an average night? How much money did you make? Those would be outputs. In the library world, these are our very special attendance numbers. These might be the door count numbers through the door, how many items are circulated, how many pet blankets were made in a pet blanket making program. These are outputs. These are things that we can count as sort of came out of the program or came from the result of the program. So these are important because if you think about this one, if you did a program in your library and let's say you input $300 worth of materials into the program and you only had one of your outputs was that there were 3 people who attended the program, that breaks down to $100 a person. So I don't know about you, but in my library system, that's unlikely to fly most of the time. So these are important things to think about for sure. So, but on the other hand, if we say we put in $3 and 300 people attended, that's a great cost ratio, but we still don't know what really happened there. We just know that it was cheap. Okay, so then the last one, how hungry are customers when they leave versus when they came in? I'm sorry, the next one, not the last one. How hungry are customers when they leave versus when they came in? This is important because this is an outcome. This is the change in the customers' lives. So when we think about this, it seems kind of obvious that coming into a restaurant, our customers should leave less hungry than when they came in. We wouldn't be a very successful restaurant for very long if they were hungrier when they left than when they came in. So that seems like obvious, but in our library work, if we think about our customers sort of filling their buckets, so how much more full did their buckets of knowledge get from coming to our program, or their self-esteem, or their development? So this could be something just as simple as a skill, knowledge, or ability. So I didn't know how to knit at all before I came, and now I can cast on. Or I didn't know how to use a Mac at all before I came, and now I am pretty comfortable with that, or I can do this particular piece. Or it could be an attitude change. So maybe I thought the library was lame, and now I think, yeah, this place isn't so bad. So outcomes can be a variety of things, but ultimately, if you just think of them as what change happened, and I typically add on to that the change in someone's life, the change for a customer is typically what we're looking at. So then the last one, how transformative were the customers' meals to their lives? This goes to a long-term outcome. These are very, very difficult to prove because if we were let's say if we were in the restaurant business, we might get our customers to take some sort of little survey or answer some questions immediately after they've had their meal while they're still with us. We may be able to email them a little, how was your experience, questionnaire or something afterwards in the next couple days, but really showing a long-term effect that is really transformative, that their life is different 3 years later because of this, and had ongoing change is a really difficult thing to prove. It doesn't mean that we don't have that that long-term outcome, that impact is sort of the same term, but it's more challenging to prove. So we typically focus more on outcomes that indicate we're moving towards that long-term goal. So for instance, the long-term transformative thing might be that I become so excited and adept at using GarageBand that I move into a music field and I become a music producer and I make millions of dollars. Like that would be the long-term impact that our one-time GarageBand program might lead to, but that's going to be difficult for us to track. So we're going to track more probably along the lines of the short-term outcomes, things like I know how to use GarageBand better than I did before. Okay, so that's some of the heaviest lifting we have to do in this session, and we'll keep going over those things. So give yourself some credit for making it through with even any sort of partial understanding of what we were just talking about. And we'll keep reviewing as we move forward and do some more practical examples. So if we think about outcomes, where are we going? Where are libraries going? Why do we do all of this? Do it yourself, Teen Tech Week, difficult, have to convince my boss, have to find money to do it, it makes a mess I have to clean up, annoy cranky teen haters, all this kind of stuff. Like, why do we put ourselves through this? And so that's where we think about our impact, that's sort of the thing that puts a smile to your face that you know, we had in our recording studio, for example, at one of the branches, we had a customer who has a song now that she recorded using the recording studio that is in iTunes. So that's kind of an impact in terms of she's on her way to a successful career as a musician. I can't necessarily prove that the studio, that if without the studio she wouldn't have done that. But what I can say is a direct outcome of her having an orientation with us, with the librarian, showed her how to do the basics in the studio. She knew how to use the tools in the studio better than she did before. So that sort of leads us towards our impact. So those are the kinds of thoughts you want to have. So in order to be able to say she knew how to use the studio better than she did before our intervention, we need some outcome measures. We need to be able to see where we're going. So some of the possible outcomes that we might have in our program that we would want to be able to measure to say, okay, what was the rate of change in these, would be maybe teens gain STEAM skills, and science, technology, engineering. Art is kind of a new one in there. A lot of times you hear about STEM skills, but there's a lot of movement to use STEAM to incorporate art, not just fine art, but art in terms of writing, music, dance, drama, communication, all of these sorts of skills, language arts. Teens gain 21st century skills such as communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and information literacy skills. So if you haven't read much about 21st century skills, these are kind of one of my big motivators in the work that I do is because these are the skills that employers are seeking that go beyond sort of didactic classroom knowledge, not just, you know, rote memorization or sort of you know, specific knowledge, but these are things they want: highly adaptable workers who can work in a global workforce, that the technology today will be radically different within 3 years' time. So they want people who can adapt, and not just to technology, but into a changing world and society and workforce. So these sorts of skills are really what they're looking for. Another possible outcome of programs that we might seek to get to is that teens feel community values youth. This is a point taken from the 40 developmental assets. If you're not familiar with those, check out the Search Institute online and you can download, they have lists of various assets. We use the 40 developmental assets for youth, which I believe is ages 12 to 18. These are the kinds of things that help youth be resilient. So we know that no matter what, youth are going to encounter pitfalls, and some of them more than others, but these 40 things have been identified as things that if we help strengthen in our youth, they're more likely to be able to rise above any of those stumbling blocks. So if they feel that their community cares about them and values them, that's one of the things we can help do for them to help get them resilient. Another outcome that I like to work for in my work is that teens view the library as a safe and welcoming place. So this may be measuring a change. This might be an outcome in a change in your staff or other customers who maybe don't appreciate teens the way that we do. So you know, I said it usually is you're measuring a change in something that's happening for your customers, but sometimes it might be your staff. although this is measuring the teens' feeling about that. We might also measure how staff are reacting. So library staff view teens as vibrant and essential citizens of the community. So you could use that one in your advocacy work, which if you're not familiar, YALSA has some wonderful advocacy tools on their website and blog, and those are going to be even more coming out soon, so keep an eye peeled for that. All right, but we'll stay focused on outcomes right now. Okay, so this is kind of putting this all together. How do you use this kind of stuff? So for right now, we're going to ignore the outcome measure columns. We'll get to that. I know I keep alluding to it, but we'll talk about it. But if we were going to do plan a program intending to have a big impact, so the first thing we would do is we might identify the huge big impact that we want our teens to be wildly successful engineers or something. But what would be and then talk about the short-term outcomes that we could help get them there. So that might be, like I said, the STEM skills or 21st century skills or whatnot. So when we use this type of logic model thinking, we're sort of doing an if this, then that model. So when we plan from this, we would plan it from right to left. So we'd start with our short-term outcomes and say we want to increase STEM skills, and then we would go to thinking about, okay, what would be some of the things that we would do, what kind of a program would we do, what would we have to have for that program, what kinds of things could we measure that would come out of that program. So we're going to do a STEM program using Minecraft, where students have to build a zombie-proof shelter that is, a certain width and depth and can withstand a certain amount of pressure or something. And then, so the activities would be that we would give them, so we want to increase STEM skills as our short-term outcomes. Our activities would be using Minecraft to have them build some structures and give them those challenges. And then our inputs would probably be laptops or some other way to access Minecraft, staff time, tables for the laptops to sit on, a room maybe, etc. And our outputs might be how many students attended, how many zombie shelters were built, maybe how many of them finished their zombie shelter or something, I don't know. Okay, so we plan from right to left. But if you're using this logic model, and if you're looking for funding, I hope you do use a logic model, because that is one of the best ways to really ensure that what you're saying is you're going to do is you're going to actually accomplish. And funders look for this, is funders would read it from left to right. So it really needs to make sense that all these things would flow and lead to at least their short-term outcomes. Like I said, impact is harder to deal with, and if you're new to this, I would just kind of ignore it, except to think of maybe what the dream vision is as a way to start. So this is a tool to check our reasoning and catch pitfalls and see potential. So if we're thinking that we're going to, let's say we want to do a program to help teens better manage their money. Okay, so our short-term outcome is maybe something like teens who attend the program will will understand how to open a checking account and how much they need to contribute to a savings account or something in order to achieve a goal. And then our outputs might be how many teens attended, how many checking accounts were opened. Our activities might include bringing in a financial planner from the community, maybe an investment banker talking about options there. And our inputs might be our guest speakers, the room, the tables, the setup, and those sorts of things. And so when a funder looks at all that, they can read it from left to right and think, yes, that has a really good chance of working and succeeding and producing those outcomes. And it's not just an exercise for funding, it's also, I use it all the time to make sure that I'm not getting distracted by some cool activity that I want to do, or some wild output that could come out of it, but that doesn't really indicate something important happening in the lives of the teens that I'm trying to serve. Okay, so when we talk about outcome measures, it can be really easy to kind of freak out. So don't panic. That's sort of the standard line. If we have any fans of Hitchhiker's Guide out there, it's always a good choice is to not panic when you start out with these. When we talk about outcome measurements, we really are talking about measuring our rate towards our desired outcome. We're not talking about measuring the presenter or the planner per se. So it's not a reflection necessarily of how good the presenter did. This isn't really a satisfaction survey or how popular a presenter is or anything else. It's not a way to measure that. It's a way to measure, did our program produce what we were hoping it would produce? So in the example of our maybe our Minecraft program, if once we have done this program and then we have pre and post tested the kids on how much they know about construction, and there was 0 rate of change, we think, well, that was a cool program in some ways, but it didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish in terms of giving them some new skills. Or we might see that 50% of the students showed an increased knowledge of engineering and construction. In which case, that when our boss comes to us and says, why should I give you that much off the floor time again to do that program? We can say, well, we really saw X rate of change in how much the students learned. Okay, so it's also measuring the rate of change rather than the youth. So this is the one that I think why people can sometimes be most concerned about the thought of outcome measures. This isn't another standardized test for youth to take. That's not the point. We're not looking to see whose kids are smarter or better or have more skills or whatnot. What we're looking at is how effective was our program at making a change in their lives. So in order to assess that, we need to know that rate of change. So if our youth might start off in a program, for instance, they might start off not, maybe we have some teens who don't read so well, and we do a teen literacy program with them. So it's not about showing, how badly it's not about taking that and thinking, and they're getting some sort of grade or assessment. It's about showing, did our intervention, whatever we did that was a change, if we had them read out loud to dogs for a week or 6 weeks or whatever, did their reading skills improve? Because if they didn't, we kind of want to know about it, because it's pretty important that these kids grow their reading skills, right? So we would want to make a change to our program. We wouldn't want to keep doing a program that's not effective at something that's so important. So the point is not to measure or assess the youth per se. That's sort of a means to an end to assess how effective our program is, so we know if what we're doing is working, if it could be better, or if we need to just scrap it and start something else. So if we try to think of outcome measures as scientific method, so we set a hypothesis. Maybe our hypothesis is that if we do this 4-session robotics program with youth that has activities where we discuss different gears and mechanisms and the students try them out, and we give them challenges. So it's individually based, and they connect with peers over the internet and in the class, that they will come out of that with higher STEM skills. And so we need to do it. So that's kind of our test, and then evaluate it, and that's where our outcome measures are, and see, well, did we have that change? And then we might need to repeat it. We might need to say, well, we didn't get as much good information there, or I only had this many kids come, or they were all brothers and sisters I know, so I'm not really sure if it's just that or if they really did make a difference. So we might need to run it a couple times, or we might need to adjust it and run it again. And that's really all this really is sort of, it's the library science part of our degrees, for those of us that have a master's degree and for those who don't. We have to think of this more as a scientific process rather than, some sort of evaluation of how good we are or how good our kids are. This is a tool to do better for them. Okay, so for instance, let's do an example here. If we took our desired outcome, that teens gain science, technology, engineering, art, and/or math skills, we might use, for outcome measures, there's a couple different ways to assess outcomes, or a couple different ways to do outcome measures. One is a self-report. That's probably the easiest way that we see most often and we use most often in my setting, is that we have students take a short, probably no more than 5 to 10 questions. 10 would be the max, really, before they sort of throw it back in your face and don't want to do it. So we do a self-report questionnaire sort of thing, and would have statements on it like this one. I learned something about technology that I didn't know before. And we use a Likert scale, so it would be very true, somewhat true, not very true, completely untrue, or something like that. We tend to avoid that sort of middle ground answer of I don't know, because I don't know how your teens are, but mine, if I ask them anything where it's initially something they don't want to think about, I don't know, is the answer that you're going to get. So it's not really very helpful. So we want, we sort of encourage them to give us the answer that's most true, like their gut, their feeling. What do you really think? Do you think you learned something about technology that you didn't know before, or you kind of didn't? And so we push them sort of towards one or the other instead. I don't know. So we kind of just remove that choice. So it's usually about a scale of 4 instead of 5. We do a pre and post test. Sometimes happens. That's more likely to happen in a reoccurring program. So either a monthly group, or maybe it's a week-long, what we call a camp, where it's maybe 4 or 5 days, couple hours a day for 4 or 5 days in a row. So we really can get a sense when you have more of an ongoing thing that this program might, really make a difference in skills, knowledge, or abilities, and that's usually what a pre and post test will ask. So in this sense, we might have them perform a task, or even again self-report what they know. So you might ask them how many degrees are in a circle, and then ask them again afterwards, when in the robotics program we use the number of degrees on a wheel to help determine how far it's going to go. So that's an easy way to show gained knowledge, skills, or abilities, is a pre and post test, but it does take some effort and some time to do before. Again, you don't want to do a ton of questions unless you're really doing like a serious research study. If you're just doing this to assess your program, we're talking maybe 5 to 10 questions. And then the third way to do outcome measures is observation. If any of you are familiar with the YPQA, it's the Youth Program Quality Assessment tool. That's an observation tool, and that requires an external observer to come in and assess on a variety of things. And that one's specific to um, certain aspects of youth programming that's really more relational. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend using that one unless you have a serious ongoing program like a home like an ongoing homeschool thing or homework help or something like that. But observation can still be good if you have a sort of list of indicators that someone can watch for and check off as they see them. But typically, if you're brand new to this, I would suggest you do a self-report or a pre-post. Okay, so another example of one of our possible outcome measures is that teens feel community values youth. So in this picture here, what you're seeing is a bunch of teens who participated in our Young Leaders Puppet Fun Shop program, and they practice and create and put on puppet shows for little kids and also lead them in songs and stuff. So for this one of the important things of doing this is that the teens, we want them to feel that the community values youth. So as part of this program afterwards, they perform, of course, and they see the kids enjoying it, but then we also have time for families to come up and get their autographs on their programs. So all of that is designed with the intention for teens to feel that the community values them and that they make a valuable contribution. So one way, one outcome measure that we would use on a self-report sort of quiz would be a library staff person cares about me, and would use that Likert scale again. Very true, somewhat untrue, untrue sort of thing. Very untrue. My work in this program makes a difference in my community. Again, self-report, and members of the community appreciated the work I did in this program. So in this case, those are 3 different outcome measure indicators. So their responses to this would indicate how close we got to our desired outcomes. So so you could use all one type of tool, or you can do a mix. Okay, so to go back, let's do, if we said we were going to do something, let's say totally simple, like we're going to make, we want our outcome, our short-term outcome to be that teens feel like they make a contribution to the community. And our activity to do that is that teens are going to make pet blankets for a shelter. Our inputs would be the fleece and scissors and instructions and tables and room and all those sort of things. Our outputs would be the number of blankets. And then our outcome measure would probably be a self-report, because we're asking them how they feel. So that would be one example. Whereas if we were doing a skill, we might do, let's say if we were teaching students how to use a particular type of software, and so our short-term outcome would be that we want them to be able to make better PowerPoints. Our output, our activity for that would be leading a class on PowerPoint. Our inputs would be the computers, the instructor, the room, etc. Outputs, how many kids attended, how many PowerPoints were made. And then our outcome measure might be actually a pre and post test sort of observation of, at the beginning we might ask them to do 3 or 4 particular tasks in PowerPoint and see how many of them can do it and how long it took, and then do that again afterwards to see the rate of change. Okay, so questions. Since we're not live anymore, this is a little trickier, but I'd love to hear what questions, what would you like to know in more detail? What ideas or skills today did you learn today that you'll use in your school or library? And really any other questions or comments or thoughts. I will tell you that one comment and sort of question that I get from my own staff and from my colleagues here is that sometimes I hear, well, can't we just do something just for fun? And can it be fun? And the answer is it should always be fun, really. Everything we do in the library is voluntary to attend, so of course we want it to be fun, so people want to come. But beyond that, humans are really programmed to think learning is fun. Little kids, no one has to convince them to try to do something and then try it again and try it again and try it again until they succeed. They do that. We sort of drive it out of them sometimes in our traditional learning settings. But when a person is actually actively learning, that is just so inherently fun to be learning. What sometimes might not be fun is school or being taught per se. But if we can facilitate learning, it's almost guaranteed to be fun. And that's really what this outcome stuff is all about, is to really try to guarantee that we are facilitating learning with our students and helping them grow, because that really will, I promise, be fun for them. Okay, so if you're interested in this stuff, of course you can contact me. There's a couple other good resources. In the fall 2013 issue of YALS, which is the Young Adult Library Services Journal, and I've got a link there for the archive where you can find the full thing. And in that fall edition, there are a number of great articles talking about the future of libraries that can give you some ideas about what types of outcomes you might want to see. And there is actually one that's by me in there called Intentionally Backwards: The Future of Learning in Libraries, that is all about outcomes. So you can read in detail if you'd like. And then there's another great book called Getting to Outcomes with Developmental Assets by multiple authors there. And it's wonderful because, in my opinion, it's been really helpful because my work that we do at Cuyahoga County Public Library, we use the resiliency model and the 40 developmental assets as a driver for what types of programming we do and for our outcomes. So that's a really great book if you really are thinking about youth development as the driving force behind your work. That's a great thing to use. And then, of course, you are very, very welcome to call me or email me for sure. It's skeppel@cuyahoga-library.org. I see my G's pop down there a little bit. And Cuyahoga, I know, is tricky to spell, but certainly email me, give me a call. That's my office number there. You can also catch me on Twitter at Ms. K all day, and you've got my website there too. So I hope that this has been helpful, and please do feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. Thank you, and good luck with your outcomes.